to start with the flex developer, we have to, at the beginning, we have to put in the bypass arch. In order to put the bypass arch in, first we are putting the hooklet of the lower molar attachment downward and inward. This is what I'm just doing right now, and it helps the flex developer, the elastic mini rod, not to get caught underneath the attachment. We then take the bypass arch out of the box, maybe curve it a little more so this stays underneath the main arch. So maybe we might even shorten it prior to insertion a little bit, because usually it's too long. So now we insert it into the auxiliary tube and put it back a little bit, and we see normally the hooklet stays right between the canine and the first premolar. So this is very fine. Afterwards we take a Weingart plier and we will make the first bend between the molar and the second premolar, and the second bend we make right underneath the bracket of the second premolar. We now make the two Z-shaped bends, the first one down, so we start here with the Adora plier and this bend goes down. Now we turn around the Adora plier and we make the second bend upward underneath the premolar. So this gives it this type of a Z shape, and we now can easily put the hooklet to the main arch. We might feel it necessary to adapt the bypass arch a little bit so this hooklet stays passively right onto on the main arch. So now we use the Weingart plier and we close this little hooklet, which makes the bypass arch still possible to slide forward and backward, but it is in a quite stable position up here. We now take a middle position between the premolar and the canine, maybe a little bit back near the first premolar. We cut the bypass arch behind, and now what's really important is never bend the end of this arch downward, because it might easily be caught by the flex developer. So we bend this end a little bit upward. Okay, and this now fixates the bypass arch in the right position. We are now ready with the bypass arch. So in order to continue, we have to bend the main arch, the main upper arch, upwards to make an anchorage, to give the whole upper arch a tight fit so the molar doesn't move backward by itself, except if you want it to. Then you have something like a headgear effect, but usually you wouldn't want to have the molar move back separately, so you want to move the whole upper arch backward and the whole lower arch a little bit forward in order to correct the class 2 situation. We are now ready to find out the length of the flex developer. So we take this ruler and we have two sides. So one side shows a smiley. We can see it here. So this side is the measuring side. So we put it in the anterior part of the headgear tube, and when the patient has the mouth closed, we read here in this area where the bypass arch crosses the ruler, and we can read the number 22. So this is the length we want to have the flex developer at. We have just been using the ruler with the smiley sign outward for measuring the distance from the headgear tube down to the bypass arch. So now we are turning around the ruler to the opposite side and we see another scale. So now we bring in the flex developer into this tube and we slide it forward until the anterior portion of the posterior attachment module is lining up with the number 22. Sometimes we have a little bit of hard time seeing it, but as we enlarge it, we can find out that we are now at the 22. So this is the part which stands out on the other side. And we now take the Flex Developer plier, which is a combination plier for punching the modules and for cutting the rod. This is a combination where you can do both. It's opening and closing. So we now insert we put the ruler in front of the knife, and we simply close we now put the anterior hooklet module, we slide it onto the Flex Developer in front, and we make sure that the line on the two modules line up with each other. This is very important. So this hooklet leans a little bit to the inside, which looks like this when we look from anterior. It's coming a little bit leaning to the inside. We'll see this later on. Now again with the same plier, we fixate the anterior module, and so it's not sliding anymore. This is just slightly deforming a small part on the lateral side, and now it's fixated. Step is to slide the pin in from behind the headgear tube, which is easy because this disc holds the pin good in position, and we just turn up the last part of the pin a little bit so it can't slide out of the headgear tube anymore. This is a real safety measure. And now we can just go on. We now ask the patient to open the mouth a little bit, because this brings us in a more comfortable position to insert the hooklet onto the bypass arch. So this is done now. We bring the Flex Developer in the right position, and then we easily can close the hooklet with a Weingart plier, so the end of the hooklet hides in a notch that is here on the side of the Flex Developer. When the patient closes the mouth again, he has a small tension on the Flex Developer. Now, this is already quite okay, and now we can put more force by shortening the pin from behind. This is done with a Weingart plier again, by rolling up the pin like the tail of a pig, and this makes it a little bit shorter and automatically forms the flex more in this nice shape. And from this moment on, we have a good force underneath here, but by opening the mouth, the patient immediately can release the tension, and by closing the mouth, it builds up again. With a small elastic, we attach the end of this pin to the molar hooklet. This gives a good position for the pin, and it doesn't jiggle around during being in the mouth. At the end, we take the disc and we tear it off. Now the securing disc is removed, and we still have this portion of the pin to later on activate the Flex Developer after it's already active. This is what we see, how we can later activate from behind. The Flex is now ready to use. It's all set in the mouth, everything is smooth, everything is fine, and just opening and closing, opening, closing, builds up the power, and this is 24 hours compliance-free action of mesializing the lower arch and distalizing the upper. it might happen that the bypass arch is a little bit too close to the gingiva, which causes the anterior hooklet module to touch the gingiva. So you're using this torque gauge to insert the bypass arch, and by bending the bypass arch out a little bit, the anterior portion moves out, and these 1 or 2 millimeters are just enough to relieve any problems. And this will help you solve all the problems near the anterior hooklet module. We now have 3 ways of activating the flex developer. The one is shortening the pin. This is by rolling up the pin a little bit. We'll do this in a moment. The next way is pulling the bypass arch back a little bit. So you need to have a small space here in order to pull it back. But this you will do when the hooklet in front has moved maybe a little bit closer to the canine. And the last is adding some resin here in the corner, which makes the activation less. And the third way is to add some resin here in the edge of the bypass arch, which also causes the anterior hooklet module to stay a little bit further back and curves the flex developer more. We now see how we pull the pin forward by rolling it up a little bit and bringing the ball a little bit closer to the back part of the headgear tube. That's happened now. So this is one possibility to do it. The second possibility is pulling back the bypass arch a little bit. We can see this here. We can even make new bends here. And again, don't bend it downward, bend it upward in order to make the anterior hooklet of the bypass move backward. We now come to the third way of activating. We put some resin, clear resin, here at the bend of the bypass arch. We form a bead, and this bead is light cured. And after light curing, we can immediately activate, close, and now the bypass arch is shortened. So it causes the flex developer to bend more. There's also a nice feature that gives the patient the chance to help himself when something happens with the flex developer. This is also good for claustrophobic patients. They need to know that they can remove the flex developer and they are not caught with this thing in the mouth. So just by using a plier, like for cutting nails, you take this anterior part and you open the small hooklet a little bit. This is what the patient can do by itself. It's not really complicated. And now he's asked to open the mouth, and by opening the mouth, he can take it off the bypass hook. Then he can easily put it onto the upper arch and just leave it in place like this. So this is a secure position. You don't fiddle around in the back. You just put it up here, and then you can open and close without the flex developer, and the patient has an easy time again.